And one of the biggest takeaways of our conversation was I need to free up my time so I'm no longer working in my business as much as I was, so that I can start working on my business. What's up, y'all? Michael Mononskyan with another live call. So today I'm really going to be focusing on, as I mentioned, this whole month, basically for the next 30-ish days, I'm including a couple of days of May, I'm going over the Super Investor Blueprint, which was basically my exact path to financial freedom, especially the massive scale I've been able to do the last couple years. A big emphasis of all this is financial freedom. There's no point, in my opinion, of just buying real estate, owning houses, whatever. All these things arbitrarily, for the most part, you have a goal. Your goal is that you are generating more passive income each month than your expenses so that you are no longer dependent on an employer or active income for you to be able to live the life that you want. That's the goal that we're really pursuing. A lot of people think, oh yeah, I want 100 houses. I want this, I want that, but it's not really grounded in the sense of, yes, that's a cool goal, 100 houses, but if 100 houses produce you $10,000 versus $100,000, well, that's different. That's a massive difference depending on, I just want houses versus I actually care about the cash flow, the passive income that comes in and covers all of my expenses. So with that being said, for anyone who doesn't know, I've purchased over $22 million of real estate in less than 5 years using none of my own money. The vast majority of that has came in the last 2.5 to 3 years, where I've systematically followed my Super Investor Blueprint, which comprises of, very simply, creative financing, where I'm buying properties with much lower down payments, much better interest rates. We're buying properties with 0 to 3% interest rates, even today in 2025. Capital raising. So I'm buying this real estate using none of my own money, which is huge. Regardless of how much money you have, it is imperative to use other people's money to buy real estate, because then your money will never be a bottleneck if a great investment comes about. You never want your own money to be a limitation if a great deal comes about. And the third one is co-living. This is how I've been able to maximize my rental income and buy bigger, better properties and better locations. For anyone who does not know what co-living is, I have plenty of videos on my YouTube, and I have a free community called Wealth Through Real Estate, where I give you a bunch of trainings on that. But simply, it's taking a property and renting it out by the room. Very straightforward strategy. So with all that being said, today I want to focus on my actual journey to financial freedom. It's funny that a lot of people who are gurus and this and that, they share, oh, I've been able to buy 500 million, 10 million, this, that, financially free, whatever. But the reality is they never actually share much of anything. And a lot of their content is motivational or whatever, but they don't actually share what their journey looks like. So that's what I wanted today. I think it helps people when you see what an actual financial freedom journey through real estate would look like. I think that helps most people get a better understanding of, okay, this is my end goal. This is how I do it for myself. And here's kind of the path that at least I know what a path towards this looks like. I think a lot of people lose clarity on what that path looks like. And that's why I want to be extremely transparent about my own journey so that it can help someone else out. So that being said, this was going to be a shorter, I'm going to be just talking through my journey to financial freedom. If you want a very detailed, broken down, it's like timelines and tools and resources, a budget tracker, net worth tracker, and trainings on how to do all that, I give all that away in my Wealth Through Real Estate community. It's a free school community, and you can do the trainings. I have a detailed breakdown. It's like 25 minutes of my journey. It's more extensive than what we're going to go through today, but I really want to share this journey for most people so you guys understand what the path to financial freedom through real estate can look like. Is this the only path? Of course not. People do it all different ways. This is my path, and I think it was pretty freaking successful. So that's why I want to share it and help other people out. So to start everything off, financial freedom, what the hell is that? Why would it even drive me, right? Financial freedom simply is you have more income coming in passively than your expenses each month. The main reason for that, like, that's cool, right? Like, you basically can live without having to do any work. That's awesome. However, why? Like, what is the purpose behind that? For me, it was very simple. I am a first generation American. I was raised by a single mom who immigrated into our country. She worked her freaking butt off, nonstop, multiple jobs, just to barely make ends meet for my brother and I. And I am always appreciative for that, but I'm not going to lie to you. It was hard as a kid to not have your parents in the home. My dad was not part of my life for the majority of my childhood, and my mom was working the vast majority of my childhood. When she was present, she provided so much quality time. When she was present, it was amazing. But the problem was she didn't have a lot of time available to spend with us because she had to work, and I understand that. However, I made a promise to myself that, in my opinion, one of the most important things I could do with my life is to raise amazing, great kids and be present in their lives and to be a great father and a great husband. That's really my ultimate purpose. I know some people it's Maseratis or first class travel and this and that. And I get it. Like, don't get me wrong. I like to travel. I like all these other things, but my real purpose in life is to be a great husband and father, very present, supportive, and loving, and to also help other people as much as I can. That's something, regardless of what career I've done over the last decade, I've always been in the space of helping people, whether it was the military, the government, whether it was real estate investing, whether it's anything that I did, pretty much environmental stuff, there was always a bigger benefit to it than just making income. So, with that being said, my drive came from how can I ensure that at some point in my life, the earlier the better, I am not limited by some person, a boss, whatever, telling me I cannot take the time off when I want to. I had to miss a recital or I had to miss some major event because of some work meeting or whatever. I didn't want to be restricted and be limited to the time I could spend with my family. So that was my biggest passion. So I was very adamant that I was going to save my way to financial freedom, whatever that meant when I started off. All right. Well, I didn't really know how when I started off. This was younger where I felt those feelings. And then in high school and really the start of college is when I started thinking, okay, well, I need to actually like get there. The path was going to be, I was going to be a doctor. I'm going to make so much money that at some way, somehow I'll never have to work again. But the reality was I wouldn't even start making income until 30. And even then, most doctors are rich, but they're not really wealthy or free. They have to keep working for their income. So I started learning about investing. The only way that you can become financially free is through investing. You cannot save your way to financial freedom. And the most obvious thing that everyone understands or knows about or learns about is the stock market. Invest in your retirement accounts and you can be financially free at some point in the future. You'll have maybe $1 million or $2 million in the bank and you can live off that for the rest of your life. Well, the reality of that kind of sucks. For me, I didn't want to give up the vast majority of my life, at least a third to more than a third, a quarter to half my life, just working, being limited in this sense to then eventually have some money when I'm 60 plus years old. That actually sounds like a freaking nightmare to me. That does not sound like the American dream to me. That was not the goal. So what do? We understood, okay, well, the way that you can get to become financially free through the stock market, the only way to expedite that timeline to make it faster, you have to invest more you just really have to invest more. So how do you invest more? You make more money or you spend less. So that's what we focused on. How do we spend less? Kind of sucked. Spending less kind of sucks. At that point, we're in San Diego. We've always had roommates at that point. We were splitting rent with multiple people. Awesome, whatever. Saving income. I was working 2 jobs at the time. I was working as an environmental engineer, and then I was, moonlighting or working later in the evenings as a leasing consultant for a real estate company. And that was at the same time that I was getting both my application for the Army reviewed, so I could be an environmental engineer with the Army. And as a backup, I had an oil and gas opportunity. So I'm a chemical engineer by trade. So an oil and gas opportunity to go be a chemical engineer, petroleum engineer for the oil and gas industry. Well, one day, some of the owners walked into the property and the thing that they highlighted for me was, damn, these people are young and they own this huge property. I started asking them questions, how they're able to do it and all that. At the highest level, what they do is they do the BRRRR model. They buy a property, they renovate it, they rent it out, increase the rents, and they refinance and pull all their money out. That blew my mind. That was not ever something I planned on in my journey. Like, that was way excessive what I thought. These huge apartment complex, I don't know what's going on. But that did inspire me to think, okay, maybe the stock market is not my only path to financial freedom. Let's start learning about real estate investing. At that point, I got my application to the military accepted. I commissioned as an environmental engineering officer for the Army. And at that point, I was doing a lot of training, but I also had a lot of free time. And what I was doing with that free time, because you're like away from your whole family. I was in Oklahoma. I had a lot of excess time. What I decided to do with that was start learning about real estate investing. This was 2018. I started learning about real estate investing, started reading books, listening to Bigger Pockets, podcasts, YouTube, whatever I can get my hands on so that I can start learning how to find deals, how to analyze deals, what actually makes a good deal, and then what are the various benefits of real estate ownership. And this was a big thing for me because I realized, okay, well, what I could do, my wife and I were actually sitting in a duplex that we were renting out. We were in one unit and there was a tenant underneath us. And we thought, why can't we just do the same thing? And with the VA loan, I was able to buy a property with 0% down. It's exactly what we did. I spent almost over a year, looking at properties and looking at properties and properties and properties, analyzing them. But I didn't actually end up buying any real estate for over a year, almost 18 months in my learning and analysis part of my journey. This is what people call paralysis by analysis. You're kind of stuck in the analysis, but not the execution. You got to take action. That's the differentiator, right? You got to learn and then take action. You don't take action, you don't get the results you want. So I went to a meetup, connected with a lot of local real estate investors. It actually really frustrated me and inspired me that all these people here were analyzing similar deals to me. They were getting similar numbers to me, but now they were the ones buying the properties because they were doing the next step. They were taking action. And what I was not doing is taking action. I was analyzing. I was not actually putting in offers to buy those properties. So that was the moment of clarity that I gave myself an ultimatum. Either I stop wasting my time just analyzing deals, stuck in this paralysis that a lot of people are stuck in. And I get it. I was there too, but stuck in this paralysis. And I had to make an offer. If I wanted to buy and hold real estate so I can become financially free, financial freedom through real estate came from cash flow. Cash flow comes from ownership. Ownership comes from closing on properties. Closing on properties comes from making offers. Making offers comes from deal analysis. Deal analysis comes from having leads, right? That is the process. But I was getting stuck at step 2, analyzing deals. I was getting deals. I was analyzing them. I was not making offers. So that was my ultimatum. I'm going to make an offer on the very next property that made financial sense for me. And that's exactly what I did. And that was the best decision I ever made. Not only was it a great investment, but it was the light bulb moment that I needed to say, wow, this is really possible for me. So what we did was we house hacked this property. This was May of 2020, exactly 5 years ago, where we bought a 2-unit. We lived in one side and then rented out the other. Actually, it was top down. We lived downstairs. Our tenant lived upstairs. We renovated the property, the unit that we were living in, and then rented out the upper unit and then swapped into the same thing later. But that was what I needed as proof of concept. And that same principle is what I applied the very next year, which was house hacking a 4-unit property using an FHA loan. As I mentioned, we increased the value of our first property. We leveraged the equity in that property to buy our next property. So the first one I bought with a 0 down payment VA loan. Not everyone has access to that. You don't need to. You can get an FHA loan with down payment assistance or a conventional loan. You can buy properties for as low as 3.5% to 5% down if you're willing to live in the house or live in one of the units. One of the biggest cheat codes. Someone who's done $20+ million of creatively financed deals. I tell everyone the biggest cheat code there is out there is quite literally house hacking a 2 to 4 unit property, living in one unit and renting out the other. You can just keep doing that and doing that and doing that. You kind of have to wait a year, but that's what you have to do. And my goal at that point was I'm going to become financially free. They're doing this 5 times. For 5 years, I'll just keep buying a property, living in one unit, renting it out. 5 properties, 5 years. That was the goal. And I was very close. That was basically what I thought was going to happen. But then I started learning more advanced strategies. What you'll realize is once you're in the game, it's easy to start learning more and more things if you're willing to take action and can consistently improve yourself. So at that point, even though I was actively looking at another property to house hack, that 4-unit, I was also learning about off-market deal finding. How can I find properties directly through sellers, right? How can I reach out to them directly? And how could I there's this thing, it's flipping contracts or wholesaling. Basically, how can I put properties under contract and then sell them to another end buyer for active income? How can I produce a little bit more income each month and have lower risk as opposed to me investing in those deals, buying those deals out of state at that point? I was going to get these great properties under contract and then sell them to someone else who was local that wanted to invest in them, or someone else who was not local but was comfortable investing out of state. That was not where I was at that point. So my first 2 investments, house hack a 2-unit, house hack a 4-unit, start learning wholesaling and off-market deal finding, sell those properties to end buyers to make some more active income. And I started learning about seller financing. I knew I wanted to buy more property now, and I knew I wanted to do it faster. I could not house hack my way to the goal that I wanted because I was getting antsy. I could not wait a year in between investments. And I definitely did not want to continue moving my family and I year over year over year into another small multi-unit. It was a great starting point, but it was not going to be my long-term investment strategy. And at that point, I was on my way transitioning out of the military. So we're going to move from Alaska. Well, we were going to move back to San Diego. And I didn't want to have to house hack. Like that was not the way I wanted to achieve financial freedom. So I started learning off-market deal finding, like I said, cash wholesaling, bird dogging, right? So I'm basically talking to buyers, finding them deals that make sense for them and getting paid for that, as well as learning seller financing. And I started combining seller financing, what I was learning there, with off-market deal finding. I started doing that in my local market. So reaching out to tons of people that own these properties in my local market, the small multifamily properties that had a lot of equity that might be good candidates for seller financing. So that was Awesome. I ended up talking to 20 different people, got pretty overwhelmed because 20 of them were interested in actually selling this route. I was not ready to do that. I wanted to do one more. This was 2 months after my last one closed. I was not ready to do multiple just like that. But it wasn't even a small multi-unit that I talked to the seller about. One of them was 20 rental cabins in Alaska. And we were basically able to structure it so I can buy this 20 rental cabins that produces thousands of dollars a month using none of my own money. Between the bank and the seller's equity, I was going to be able to buy this property, get paid to buy the property, and make thousands of dollars a month in cash flow. Those three transactions, those first three, was all I actually needed to never have to work again. It covered over $7,000 of cash flow a month, and I never had to work again after that point. But that's not why I want to be financially free. I wanted financial freedom to be able to work on the things that I care about, help people grow what I'm trying to do, but also have total control of my schedule and my time. So I continued on. I continued trucking along. I moved to San Diego, got out of the military, moved to San Diego, and then I met my mentor, Pace Morby. And within a very short period of time, he identified one of my biggest holdups in my real estate investing journey was that, yes, what I had done was impressive. And most people could just stop there. You don't need to do more than that. A couple properties can literally change your entire life. But for me, I had financial freedom, but I did not have time freedom. So I was still working too much in my business. And one of the biggest takeaways of our conversation was I need to free up my time so I'm no longer working in my business as much as I was, so that I can start working on my business. And what I was doing was things like assisting with property management, with renovations, with bookkeeping, with tax stuff, all these other things that were for operations, but they were not helping me grow and scale my business. They were not the highest and best use of my time. The highest and best use of my time were finding more great deals and raising money to buy those deals. Those were skills that I did not fully have at that point. I need to find more creatively financed opportunities, way higher volume than I was doing myself, right? I cannot just send letters and talk to all these people. Like, that was too inefficient. And secondarily, if I wanted to grow my portfolio, I needed to learn how to raise capital to buy these deals. What are private money lenders? What are private money partners? How can I structure deals that make sense for them, make sense for me, so that I can get into more investments using little to none of my own money? And basically, that was what I dedicated myself to from 2023 until now. I went from a $2 million portfolio, from never raising money, around $2 million, $7,500 of cash flow, to $22+ million of real estate, all of it through capital raising, using none of my own money, around $5 million of capital deployed. And I have people on my team that manage all the operations that I don't want to do. I have bookkeepers, I have a CPA, I have a fractional CFO, I have my asset manager who helps with a lot of the oversight of the properties and the management. And my job, really, find more deals, raise more money. And even that you can leverage. And that's kind of what I'll be breaking down over the next 30-ish days. If you want to get the fast track to all that stuff, I do have my free Wealth Through Real Estate school community that you can learn, get much more detailed breakdown of all this stuff to help you on your own investing journey. And I'm really going to break down what these last 2 years have looked like, but it's really been my super investor cheat code: buying properties creatively financed, raising the money to buy those deals, so capital raising, and then co-living, my favorite management strategy, which then allows me to buy bigger and better properties that generate much higher cash flow, that are usually in much better locations. They're bigger, better properties that also appreciate more and get me massive wealth at the same time as the cash flow. It's a beautiful combination. And if I were to go back, I wish I knew this stuff when I first started, but you have to learn somewhere. And something I posted earlier: progress, not perfection. You have to take the next step. But then now I'm fortunate that I have this cheat code, in essence: creative finance, capital raising, co-living, that then anyone can implement and be able to fast track their path to financial freedom. And that's what I'll be breaking down over the next month, as well as hosting 4 webinars in the month of June, so my birthday month, going over a more detailed breakdown of financial freedom, not just my journey, but how you can do the same. Mastering deal analysis, which is massively pivotal when it comes to creatively financed deals, how to consistently find great deals and raise money for those deals. And then the super investor cheat code, really breaking that down, fleshing it out much more. So if you want to stay involved in all that, go to the Wealth Through Real Estate school community. As I mentioned, absolutely free, and you'll get an invite to that. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate you guys. And I hope you guys have a phenomenal rest of your day.